Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of T-Dog RC. We're in the workshop again and carrying on with the mini Kangaroo build, which is a flying wing with a powerful engine I'm making, and this is all made from plans and a box of balsa wood basically. And this episode we are focusing on the fuselage, which I've already started here. And I'm also going to be working on getting the engine mounted, and got to build like a front up for this, sort of a nose out of balsa, and then of course we've also got to put the canopy on as well. So in the last episode we did the wings and the tails, which I'll put a link up here so you can have a look at that one. But yeah, this one we're focusing on the fuselage. If you are into fixed wing RC and you enjoy watching people build stuff, then why not follow along to the channel? It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, so just hit the subscribe button in YouTube, hit the bell icon so you get notified when I bring out new videos. And it also helps me out if you enjoy what I'm doing, just to give me a thumbs up as well. That helps with the YouTube algorithm, which is always handy. So yeah, appreciate it if you would do that. Right, let's get the camera on the bench and let's start building the fuselage. Okay, so we are working on the fuselage, as the said in the intro. So these are the fuselage sides. This one's already come out of the plywood template that it's in. As you can see, it's you can see it's pretty bent. So I need to get this one out, which just needs to be cut out because it's just got these little lugs on. So I need to go through and do that. Just sand those lugs down. They're a little trickier than balsa wood, obviously, but not too bad. Okay, so we need to make sure we have a left and a right, so it's going to be like that. I've already taken the firewall, which is they supply this with 2 pieces of ply, so I've just glued that together using some wood glue and left that overnight, so that's nice and solid. Now usually you would think the firewall would, it would go kind of like this. So in between the 2 fuselage sides, but on this model it actually just goes on the front, and then you've got some triangle at the front, and then this just basically sticks on like that. So here's the triangle. This comes with the wood pack, should I say. So I need to mark this up and cut this to the size of that, and then what I need to do is along the bottom, so this is the bottom and that's the bottom there, I need to glue some more triangle section right across here, and obviously that's going to flatten this out. So that's really the first job, is to get the triangle bit joined on here and along the bottom. So I'm just going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy for this, and then for this bottom section here, I think because this is pretty bent, I'm probably going to use some CA just to fasten this in place. So let me get this cut to size first. So it's just going to go like that basically. We'll cut it slightly oversize, and then we can always sand it down. Okay, so we've got to remember to get this on the right way. So that's going to go on there like that. That one is going to go on there like that. Right, so we'll get some epoxy mixed up and get those glued on. Right, let me show you where I'm at then. So I've got the front triangle section epoxied on, both sides there, as you can see. That's pretty much gone off now. And then I used CA and glued this bottom triangle section on whilst sort of holding the fuselage sides down, so they're nice and straight now. And they're going to go like this. So then I need to get this glued in place, which I'm going to epoxy in place as well. But what I'm going to do first is, just to make sure it's square, is I'm going to glue the servo tray, which I've already cut out. I've put just some extra Balsa rails down the side just to give it a bit more area to glue to. And then I've marked on here, which I think you can see, that's the top of the tray, so that's going to go like that. So it's quite far down, but that still gives me enough room. I've put a servo in, and that's the right place for the servos so they don't hit this triangle at the bottom. And then my plan is, I think, to get this sort of glued in, well, hold this in place, which is a little bit tricky. We're going to get this held in place like this, get it lined up, and then put some pressure on. So the fuselage is flat and I'm squeezing it as well at the same time. Run some CA in, and then that'll ensure that it's nice and square at the back. One thing I do need to make sure I do is get these completely square at the front like this, otherwise that will be a bit of a disaster. So it's going to go something like that. Nice and level at the front. Run the CA in, and we're good to go. Obviously it's wider at the front at the moment, but I'll pull that together when I put the firewall on. So run the CA in. Make sure I'm putting some weight down on it as well, like I say, so it's flat to the board. Then I'll just give that a few minutes to go off. Okay, so that's worked nicely, nice and square. So now I can get this firewall glued on. The firewall does stick up, I've noticed on the plan, so it's about, I don't know, 3 mils higher than the fuselage size, but that's kind of how it is on the side profile as well of the plan. And then there's a block that you shape, that you put on top of there. So I've got to get some epoxy mixed up to glue these front bits on, and I think I'm going to have to tape this into place. So let's see if we can. Struggling with the epoxy tonight because it's pretty, well, it was chilly in here before I put my heater on. It is December, and epoxy doesn't like to be cold, particularly not the resin. The hardener's normally okay. The fuselage, spread that on. And I've just put a bit of tape here. I think you can just see it, some normal tape, so it doesn't stick. And then we'll just get this on like this. Make sure it's and as I say, I think what we're going to have to do is sort of tape it in position. It's kind of a bit tricky really. Could really do with clamping it, but there's nothing to clamp it to. Right, I think that's going to do it. So holding it in place with these blocks, making sure it's square, and then it's 5-minute epoxy, so we'll just wait for that to go off. It shouldn't take too long, and then that's kind of the fuselage side together. Right, let me show you where I'm at then, following on from the last clip. So we've got the fuselage joined together. I did this with, as you saw, with the firewall, getting that in position, and the servo tray, kind of gluing it all around that. I did make a little bit of a mistake with the servo tray. I don't know if you noticed on the last clip, but I glued it in the wrong way round, basically. So I'd got the throttle servo here, and then the two Elevon servos here, but it should be the other way round. But sorted it out fairly quickly. I just had to cut a new piece for the middle there and glue it back in, so it's not a major issue. Probably not quite as strong as if that was just one solid piece of wood, but it's still very strong, so that's not going to go anywhere. And next time I do a bit of epoxy, I'll just put an extra bit of epoxy on the bottom of it here, just to secure it in place. But that's nice and solid and square, which is good. I've also glued on these back pieces here. I've done it cross grain as per the plan, because that gives you a bit of extra, stops it from twisting so much. And then the other thing I've done, I've just cut this down on the bandsaw, and then obviously I've just got to give that a bit of shape. And then at the back, I've angled it like that, so I just need to sand that down a bit more so it's sort of fits in with the fuselage sides, and then we'll just have a piece on the back, obviously all cut to size. But it's fairly I mean, it doesn't get much more simple than this, to be honest. Used PVA just to glue this on, so it's easy to sand with PVA. And then I was just cutting a piece that goes on the front here, so you just have that piece on there like that. That gets glued into position. I'll shape that, plane that down so it blends in with the front of the firewall here. And then next thing I need to do now is, I've got this little engine mount which I bought, which should be the right size, because it's 30 to, it looks small, but it does say it's 30 to 45, so it's got to be the right size really, because my engines are 36, so bang in the middle more or less. So we're going to get that marked up and drill the holes to get that in position. I'm going to put a little bit of right thrust on it as well, so I'll do that by just putting a couple of washers, I think, behind the left hand side of the firewall, just to move it over to angle it over to the right there. And then once I've done that, I can then start building up the sides. I'm going to measure where the engine comes to, and then I need to put a piece of triangle out to that length, because that's going to be the front of the nose. So that's going to be like the front of the nose of this is going to be the back of the spinner plate of the engine, if that makes sense. So and then we can start shaping that, cutting that to size, etc. And it's just basically made up of triangle on the bottom, well, in fact, I'll start by putting some 1/4 inch bolts on the bottom, then triangle, and then you've got just some 1/4 inch sides that come out, and kind of cut them at a bit of an angle here, so it all sort of shapes into a nose. So yeah, next job I think is to let's get the engine out, let's make sure it fits in here okay, and then we can drill the holes for this. So hopefully, oh yeah, perfect, absolutely perfect. So I'm going to mark, while I've got it like this as well, I'm going to mark the holes and drill these. I've got my little engine mount marking tool, which you've probably seen before if you've watched some of my other videos. And then I'm just going to have that on the front there like that. It's going to be a bit of a beast. So yeah, that fits fine. So I think first job is let me get this marked up and drilled out, and then we can get the actual engine mount marked up and drilled out into the firewall. And then once I've done all that and I've got this fastened in place, well, I've drilled the holes for it. Need to drill a hole for the throttle as well. So I've got a throttle cable coming through here. Get all that done, build all the sides up. Then it's a case of slapping a load of fuel proofer on it and getting all that done. And then I'm not going to stick this piece on yet either, because I want just to have nice access to the to get the engine bolts through, because I think I'm going to have to drill through this triangle here, because that's probably going to interfere with the bolts. So we'll probably have to just drill some holes in there just to clear a bit of the triangle out the way. And then once I'm happy with all that and I've got the engine mount, you know, that's easy enough to bolt into place, then we can glue this on. So, going to get this marked on here, then I'll show you when I've drilled the holes in here. Right, so got this mounted. That was obviously fairly straightforward. I've drilled the holes in the mount for the engine. So next thing I need to do is measure up. So I've got a piece of wood. I just need to cut this square first actually, and then we've got to put the engine on like that, and then I want to measure where, well actually I'll probably have it so the wood kind of comes level with the middle of the prop plate there, and then we can start building this up. So first thing I'm going to do is just cut this square. So let's just get this. Just use my razor saw. Okay, that's nice and square there. Do it slightly oversized so we can sand it down. And again, let's use the razor saw there. Right, so that should, yeah, that's nice. Right, let's get this on then. I wonder if I'm going to use these bolts here. Maybe I'll just I think these are going to be okay. I've not actually tried them. Yeah, perfect. I might just sort of loosely bolt this down. That will do nicely. That is going to go on there like that, and then I'm just going to get this, put it parallel to the, in fact let's do it that way, so it's going to touch the back of that prop nut or prop plate, whatever you want to call it. I never remember the names of those things. So we're going to cut it about there. We'll use this again so it's nice and square. That should go on there nicely, which it does. So next job really I think, is to get that piece glued in position, because once that's glued in, we can then start building up these sides. So effectively, we're going to have something like that. Except, like, as you can see there, we're going to have to allow for the needle valve. So that's the sort of thing we need to bear in mind. That side's going to be okay, because that will just go straight on like that. That piece of wood's not big enough, but you get the idea. So yeah, I'm going to get this bottom piece glued on, and that will make a kind of a start then. But that's lining up perfect there, so that's looking good. I don't think I'm going to sort of angle this in or anything like that, because it'll just, well, I won't be able to glue the wood to it for a start, so we'll just keep it straight. But then what I'll probably do, the triangle's just way too thick to fit inside here, so I can't put a piece of triangle along there and there. But what we'll probably do is just get a piece of wood like that, once I've got the sides glued on, just to sort of give it an extra bit of thickness, and then we can that gives me some material to basically sand it nice and smooth. So let me get this epoxied on first. So what I'm going to do, in fact I've already got some there, you might be able to see it on the camera, but there's a bit of clear tape there, so I'm going to put that there and then glue that in place, and then we're not going to be bothered about if it sticks to my need to try and keep that throttle closed so we don't get any dust in there. Yeah, I need to just try and stop that from sticking to the bench basically. So yeah, I'll get that done, get some epoxy mixed up, and then once that's gone off we can start having a look at the sides. Okay, apologies in that last clip if the sound was a bit funny. I left the charger plugged into the camera, which can sometimes affect the sound a bit. But I've glued that bottom piece on, so that's all dried now. And then spinner's going to go on like this. Just angle that a bit so you can see. So this is like a 55mm spinner, so it's quite a big one, but you kind of need it to cover the front, because obviously the front's quite square. So then I've cut these bits out. These are going to be the side pieces. So they're going to epoxy in like this. And then what I am going to do is I'm going to take these offcuts, cut them to the size of this, and then I'm going to slide those inside at the front on each side, and that'll give me a nice thick piece of wood. Then I'll be able to sand kind of around the spinner, and make it a little bit more aerodynamic, shape that a bit more. So that's the idea around that. In fact, what I might do is put one along the bottom and then two bits, and then that'll give me a real chunky piece then to shape down, so it's kind of a similar shape to the spinner then. And as you can see, the gap there has worked out perfect. So we've just got you can't quite see there, but it's about 2 or 3 mils gap between the back of the spinner and the front. Obviously I've not got the engine angled yet, so I need to get some washers behind this engine mount and get that angled, but I'll do all that before. Well, I need to fuel proof for everything first, and then, well, sand everything down, then fuel proof for it, and then we can do that bit. So what I'm going to do now, before I glue these bits, just been having a think. It's going to be virtually impossible to get to the nuts underneath here for the engine, to fasten the engine on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this. Well, that's not going to. I'll take the engine off first, but basically I'm going to poke this through the holes, down, put a mark In fact, what I'll do, sorry, is I'm going to drill all the way through the engine mount holes into that Balsa below, same on the other side, and then I can drill some slightly bigger holes. And what I'll probably do is put the bolts in upside down. It is going to be fiddly, but I think that's the best way to do it. And then, because I've got those holes in the bottom, I can get my hex wrench up and then bolt it from the top. So I think that's going to work. These are the sorts of things you kind of have to think about, because you might find, you know, you get it all glued in place and then you come to put the engine in and realise that you can't actually do it up. So because it's going to be tricky to get in any pliers in here, or even a spanner. I suppose I might be able to get a little spanner in there. Anyway, I think I'll drill those holes, because it doesn't matter if I don't need the holes, it's going to get covered with film anyway. And then if I don't need them, I can just leave them covered up. If I do need them, I can just uncover them. I think that probably makes the most sense. So yeah, I'll do that. So I think next job is I've got to take the engine off now, because then I've got to drill a hole through, a big hole in the middle for the fuel pipes and things to go through. I'll take the engine mount off to do that. But the other thing I've got to do is actually drill through. It's the only way it's going to work. I'm going to have to drill through the mount. Just, you can't quite see there, but just under here, just under this right hand bolt, to get the throttle cable to come through. But that's fine, that's going to work out okay. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do then is take the engine off, get those bits drilled out, and then I'll show you once we've got these pieces glued in, and we can get these support pieces glued in as well. I'm using epoxy to do all this because I want it to be fuel proof, so I thought it's probably best to epoxy all this on. And obviously once that's all done and I've sanded it to shape, then I can get the whole thing fuel proofed with some fuel proofer. Right, well, let me show you where I've got to. I've been doing a lot of planing and sanding as usual, so I've managed to get this shaped. I'm quite pleased with it. It's pretty even all the way around, and yeah, I've sort of rounded off the edges, and then it's quite difficult to, I put the nose cone on and kind of shaped it to the nose cone, but it's quite difficult to do because obviously along here it's pretty thin material, so you can't sort of bring it in at a nice angle. It's kind of quite sharp at the front really, but it looks all right. I'm pretty pleased with it. It's nice and even, as you can see. It's pretty square and even on both sides. So when you've got the engine in, so if we just sort of put that in temporarily like that, I've also only got the mount temporarily put in as well, because I've got to take it out now, and that's it, that's how it goes. It's a bit further back. Yeah, I've got to take it all out now and just get some fuel proof on so I can leave it overnight, but it's not bad. It looks, you can see that it's kind of taking the shape of the nose cone. So yeah, it's relatively aerodynamic. It's not a complete brick flying through the air, because obviously the fuselage is very square, so it's difficult anyway to get it looking something like an aerodynamic aircraft. But it's yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. That's gone quite nicely. So I'm going to leave it like that. I'm not going to do much more with it. I mean, at the end of the day, this is only a, you know, it's just a sort of fun chuck around model. It doesn't need to be super precise, but yeah, I think that's going to be absolutely fine. So the main thing is it's nice and even, so it doesn't look. It's very easy sometimes when you're sanding like blocks down like this, particularly around the nose. It's quite easy to get them wonky because you sand too much on one side and on the other, and then you end up in a bit. I've done it before where I've ended up in a mess because you've sanded too much off one side, but you can't do anything about it because this side, one side's okay. So the only thing you can do is kind of almost add more material and re-sand it down. But yeah, that's pretty nice and even. So yeah, we'll get it all fuel proofed. So I'm going to fuel proof all in here, all the inside. Obviously the outside's going to be covered with film, but I'll probably just fuel proof for these end bits as well, although they will be covered, it's best to sort of fuel proof that end grain and along the top there as well, because it could soak up the fuel if the covering comes off. But hopefully we'll be able to get all of this covered along the top and up here. Yeah, and then I'll fuel proof it, obviously firewall, back of the firewall as well, and then just a little bit in here because the fuel tank's going to be in here, but shouldn't really need too much of that fuel proofing, because unless the fuel tank starts leaking, should be okay. So the last little bit I've got to do is I've just cut this bit of wood to go on the back. So I've angled that down, you can see there now at the back. So this top deck follows that angle there. I've just got to round the edges of this off as well. But then I'll glue that on there like that, just with some wood glue, and then once that's dried I will get my razor saw and, using this as a guide, cut through that top piece, and that should get me the angle that I need. So yeah, just gonna put a bit of wood glue on this. Always put way too much on, but we'll get that in position like that. Just get a little bit of tape. So yeah, we'll leave that to dry overnight, then I can sand all that down next time I'm in the workshop, and then we can get started on the canopy then. So that'll be canopy's going to be coming up next, I think. Right then, bit of progress to update you on. So you can see I've got the top hatch here. I've just literally cut that out just now. I mean, there wasn't much to show. It's just getting 1/4 inch Balsa sheet, cutting that to size, and then I've just rounded the edges off just with a bit of sandpaper. Yeah, can't quite see, it's not going to focus, but that's all there is to it really. So that's kind of that's all there is to the top hatch, fairly straightforward. I've cut this back section and sanded that. I've got a little bit of light filler in there just to smooth that out, so that's all done. Still need to glue this piece in at the front and cut that to size and sand it, but I'm not going to do that because I'm still waiting to put the engine mount on. And as you can see, I've sprayed the engine bay matte black, so I put a coat of fuel proofer on, let that go off over a few days, then use some matte black paint, sprayed that on, and then I'm going to go over it with another coat of fuel proofer on top to seal that paint in. So that should be all sorted. That's looking nice. At the moment it kind of looks a bit like what we would call a narrow boat here in the UK. Doesn't look a lot like a plane at the minute, but I'm sure it will do once it's bolted onto the wings, etc. So what I need to do really is just sort of shove that out the way for a bit. You see, by the way, here in the background, I know it looks a bit of a mess, but I'm keeping all the scrap bits of wood, all the decent scrap bits of wood from this, just because I'm going to need those, I think, when we get onto this canopy. So a couple of bits to do on the canopy. There's just 2 laser cut parts left. There's this piece here, which just needs to cut out, and that's just literally going to glue in here in front of this back piece. You can't quite see that, so that's just going to glue in here. And then I've ordered some blind nuts, so well, I only need one, but obviously I have to order a couple, but I've ordered those to go in there. So I've got a blind nut, an M3 blind nut going through there. That's going to sit there like that, and then quite simply drill a hole in the back of the canopy and just find an M3 bolt to go through there with a washer on. That's going to hold the back of the canopy down, and then the front of the canopy has just got this little lip, so I'll just glue that on there, again nice and straightforward, and then that is just going to hook under this bit once this bit's glued into place. So fairly straightforward system for securing the canopy. But what I want to look at as well is I got this from a place called Vortex, which is recommended on the plan. I think they do like vac form stuff, which is the canopy. So let's just move this out of the way. That is going to fasten on there. Kind of looks a bit wide and wonky, but I have to cut it. Obviously, it needs cutting out along there. Wonder which way is the front and which is the back. I'll have to check the plan. You'd assume that that was the back and that's the front. But what it says to do is to build up this front and back section with some sort of sheet balsa. So, you know, put some scraps together, something like this. So they're going to sort of glue on there, and then we're going to have to build those up and then shape it around this. So it's got to, like, obviously a bit of a curve at the front, and then it's going to curve down at the back as well. So it's going to be quite a lump of wood actually, because that's actually pretty high. Let me just check on the plans. So yeah, actually on the plan, this is way bigger than the one on the plan, so I need to trim this down, and also it needs to be trimmed at like an angle. In fact, let me show you the plan. Got the plans over here on my other bench. Let me just zoom this in a bit. So that's the canopy on the plan. You can see you've got this front section here, and then you've got this balsa at the back as well. So that's kind of what you have to make up. But then the actual canopy is way bigger. So that's going to require quite a lot of trimming down to size. It's kind of a bit frustrating, I suppose, but I guess that's just the way it is. But I'm pretty sure this flat bit here is going to be the front, and then this bit is going to be the back there. So I'll get the canopy trimmed up, and then we'll have a look at how we're going to make these block pieces. Yeah. So yeah, it's 1/4 inch sheet for the base, which I've done. The canopy just literally screws to the side of the base by the looks of it. And then you've got some 1/16 rails either side. So they just run on the underneath either side of the this canopy, and that just obviously locates it in position on the fuselage, stop it moving around side to side. So yeah, let's get this cut out and see how it looks. Right, so I thought that this was going to be one of those jobs that was just an absolute nightmare, and when I first started cutting the canopy, I was just like, oh, this is just going to be a mess. But persevered, kept on cutting it, used some sharp scissors, big scissors, little scissors, really sharp knife, and I've actually got it to a really nice shape. You can just see I've drawn some lines on it there. That's what I was cutting to. That's how the front of it looks. That's kind of how the back looks. So all looking very nice and cut to the right size, so the sides of this sit flush with the bottom. Basically you just put some screws in to secure it down. So what I'm going to do now is I might actually just tape it in place, because I need to start making the rear block. Well, and the front block as well. So we'll just get it taped in position like that, because I don't think I'm going to drill the holes until I've just got it all covered. So I'll do that last of all. I'm also going to spray this. So I'm going to spray the inside of it black, so it will look like a nice gloss black. So that's in position there. And then what I've done, I've obviously saved all these piles of wood here. So I've got a piece like this, for example, which is just scrap now. And that is just slightly too big for where the top of the canopy is. But so that's going to be fine, because I'd rather it obviously be a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to measure it at its furthest point, which is going to be there. Well, not measure it, but I'm just going to mark it. So mark that there. And then I'm going to cut loads of these strips, so it's just one big straight block all the way across. And then I can start, and I'll do the same at the front as well. Then I can undo the canopy, and I can start, well, get this glued into place, I think. Well, I'll get all the pieces glued together to make one block. Maybe I will glue it into place, and then I can start shaping it to the to how I want to the shape of the canopy, basically. So I'm just going to get that done first. I won't film chopping up loads of bits of wood. It's not going to be very exciting. But once I've got it glued together, I'll do the same for the front as well. Obviously that one doesn't need to be anywhere near as big. Probably that piece like that, for example, will easily do there. Or what I might even do is just find some bits. That one's not quite big enough, but it's only going to need a couple of blocks, so might be able to make it out of this spare piece here. So just cut that to size, build it up. So that should be fairly straightforward. In fact, yeah, that's too thin. It's annoying, because that would have been spot on, actually, that would. Although I could use that. Oh no, because it wants to be, yeah, that's not going to work. It needs to be the same width. Guess I could just do it that way around, but then it's not gonna shape as nice if I do it cross grain. So I'm gonna have to use this piece, but that's okay. So probably two of those bits. Maybe it just needs one thin piece gluing on right at the top on this one, and then I can shape that. So that's going to do that. We'll do the back like this. Yeah, so I'll get all these bits cut, and then I'll show you where we're at. Right, so I got all these cut to shape. Feels like a lot of wood, a lot of balsa, but I've got these all cut like this. So that's going to sit on there. Obviously it's going to sit further back, so it's actually going to sit, well, I've measured it, so the end of this is where it needs to be. So yeah, that's going to come back inside here. But obviously there's going to be an awful lot cut off this, because I've got to shape it around the back of the cockpit. But I thought that was probably the best way to do it. Right, so I've got this block cut out here at the back. It's a heck of a lot of balsa, just a load of scrap strips, but a lot of it's going to be cut off. I've kind of drawn a rough shape on there already. It's a tricky shape because the back of the canopy's angled like that, and then it's also indented at the top. So I think all I can do is get this glued together and then just start, because the width of that is, it perhaps wants to be just ever so slightly narrower, but it's just going to be a case of chopping. Once it's all glued, I'm going to have to get my razor saw, sort of cut some big chunks off it and basically just shape it up with my plane and the knife until we get that to fit inside. What I might do is I might take the canopy off and then do it that way, and sort of get this to fit over it. Might be easier than trying to sort of slide this in. But yeah, first job anyway is to get all this lot glued together. Now it is a big piece of balsa wood, but as I say, this is going to be, it's going to have a lot of wood cut off it, so it's going to be cut along the edges to make it rounded, and it's going to come right down as well, so there's going to be quite an angle on it. And again, you can't just get a ruler and kind of angle it like that so it just slopes like that, because you need because of the shape of the top of the canopy, you need it to be at the highest point in the middle. So I think it's going to have to be more sort of like that, so you leave this middle bit, I think. I'm not sure, to be honest. But anyway, I think the easiest thing to do is get it all glued together so it's one block, and then just start hacking away at it and getting it all shaped up so the canopy just fits on, obviously. And then for the front, it's a lot more simple. It's just 3 blocks, well, 2 of these, I think 1/4 inch, and then just probably a 1/16 on the top. And then that is just gonna, I'm just gonna glue this together and then glue that on there, and then that'll just be shaped up once this is glued in place, and I'll just keep dropping the canopy on it. So I think this, obviously the front's going to be a lot easier to do. So I'm going to get those glued up, and I'll leave those overnight, so I'm going to glue it with wood glue so it's easy to sand. And while that's gluing, I'm going to get stuck into the well, I've got to put the engine mount in place, so I want to get that put in place, and then some Loctite on the bolts because I don't want to take that off, and then I've just got this bit to glue on the top because I've been waiting to screw the engine mount down, or bolt the engine mount down, should I say. And what I'm going to do is on these 2 left-hand holes, I'm going to put a washer, maybe 2, before I put the engine mount on, just to give it that right-hand thrust angle. So that should sort that out. Yeah, so I'll come back to you when I've done all that and we've got this all glued together. I've maybe started shaping it a bit so you can see how I'm going to do it. Right, let me show you where I've got to then. So after a lot of carving, literally the floor of the workshop was covered in shavings, so used my bandsaw, used my little razor plane, sandpaper, permagrip blocks, sanding sticks, all sorts of stuff. But we are about there, so I've ended up with these 2 pieces. So this is the back piece. I don't absolutely love these, but they don't look too bad at all, really. Considering that was a massive square block, it does actually just look like one block of wood now. And then the front one kind of looks like this. It's a bit of a weird shape, almost like a piece of cheese, but and look, you can see how much I took off. You can see that around there, that was a sheet of 1/16 balsa, like all along the top, but now I'm just left with that tiny little piece there. So that's going to go in like this, so it's kind of going to look like that, which looks alright, I think. It's nice and streamlined anyway, and sort of blends into the front of the canopy. And then the back one, might have to put it in like this because I've kind of, yeah, that does the job. Bear in mind as well, the canopy's going to be sprayed gloss black, so you won't actually see like the inside, because I was going to face that one off, because on the plans it says to just put like a 1/16 piece of wood there to, you know, to make that nice and neat, but it's pointless because you're not going to see it because the canopy's going to be jet black. So yeah, that one's going to go in there like that. So it's kind of going to look something like that, which I don't think looks too bad. You see? And as I said, it's only like a sports model. It's not like a scale model or anything, but yeah, doesn't look too bad. So happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this one glued on, because that kind of covers most of the front. So that's going to glue on on there. I can get that glued on now, or just PVA that on and leave that overnight. And then the back one, I've just been thinking about it. I don't think I'm going to stick that on yet, because it's going to be a lot easier just to cover this plate and probably cover that separately, and then I'll stick it on. No point in messing around trying to get the cover in to sort of go around all these bends when you can just do it separately. So let's have a quick look what it looks like. Obviously I've still got to glue this bit on as well. Yeah, so that looks all right. That's kind of how it looks on the plans, to be honest. That's not far off at all. And obviously when this is all one colour, you know, and it's all sort of blended in, that's going to look pretty good. I mean, it's never going to be super blended, because you've kind of got just these square bits, you know, that are rounded off. But yeah, I think that looks all right. So that's that. What I do need to do quickly though, let me just get this one out. Is I just need to get that pretty much lined up where I want it. Just want to draw along the inside of this. Like that. Let me just mark the canopy as well, so I know where that's going to go. I can take that off now. So that's ready to be, basically I need to just wash that, and then I just need to grab some paint from the local hobby shop, get that painted. So last few little bits to do on the canopy. So it's obviously the fuselage is very thin, and what it says to do is, well, it says to put some strips of 1/16, but I've actually there's some really thin plywood that's kind of left over in the kit, so I thought I would just put that on because it's going to be a bit stronger as well. Not that it really needs to be that strong, so I just need to get that cut to size and then have that just in front of the line. Doesn't need to be super accurate, of course. Do you know what? I think I'm going to use these pieces actually, because that's going to annoy my OCD, is the fact that if I've got two that are a different size. I'll save that piece, probably just cut that off. That might be useful for something. I know my bench looks a bit of a mess at the minute. I normally like to keep it all nice and tidy, but I've got loads of scrap wood. It's all the bits I'm using at the moment to build this. But once I've finished this, I'll clear it all down, ready for the next project. But yeah, that gives me two nice strips, so I get those PVA'd on. So one there like that, one there like that, and then put some weights on those and just leave those overnight. And then we have just got, and again I can get this glued on as well, the little canopy tab. Which is just going to go on here like that, so we can get that glued on. Put a little weight on that, leave it overnight, probably use one of these batteries. So that'll be that, and then the only last little bit I've got is just this piece here. I need to just glue in there, and this is what's going to hold the canopy. Oh, I've just snapped my knife blade. There we go. Never particularly like putting those on. Feels like you're going to cut through your fingers. Let's try again then. Problem is with this laser cut, with it being plywood, the tabs are really solid. It's alright when it's balsa wood, but not so much when it's pretty thick plywood. But there we are. Let's give that a quick going over with this. And what I want to do with this is just get one of my... So I've actually found these the other day. They're going to be perfect for the canopy. So I've got a couple of blind nuts and then some little hex head bolts to go through. So he's just going to go in there like that, and typically it's slightly too small, so just need to get a bigger hole drilled. Then I'm just going to get that, stick it in my vise. That's going to be okay. A little quick blast of activator, and then that it's just going to sit in here. It should be a really nice fit because, yeah, it's actually slightly too big. I think in the new year I'm going to invest in a little sander. I think forget what make they are. Something or other. Proximo, something like that. And it's like a bench sander with a plate on it, so you can really accurately get stuff sanded square. That would be a nice tool to have in the workshop for sure. Just had a thought though. That is going to interfere with the rails, so we're going to have to just make sure the rails, actually it's going to interfere, yeah, so we're going to have to cut these down a bit more because we've got this triangle as well at the front, which I didn't think about. Actually no, it's not going to interfere with the triangle, is it, because you got that on, but it will interfere with that, so we'll cut that like that. Tell you what, I'd be lost without this razor saw. If you haven't got one of these, you need to invest in one because they're so good. Okay, that's got those cut to size. So we're looking pretty good. So let me put that back here. Need a little bit of PVA on this. We'll wood glue this on at the back here. That's looking good. So we'll leave that just to dry overnight, and then I can get these rails glued in place. Then we can just leave that overnight. Every time I put it on, it just moves around. I'm tempted just to leave it because it's pretty well sort of suctioned itself down onto the wood. So I think that's going to be okay. So that's all that done. What else do we need to do? So yeah, I've just got to get the engine mount put on, and then I can finally glue this piece in place, get that shaped up, and then I will show you what it looks like all together with the canopy on, and that's going to wrap this video up. So I'll be back in a few seconds. Well, it's the day after the clip before, and everything's dried, all that PVA's gone off, and I thought I'd just, for the end of this video, put it, a bit of a dry run, put it together, see what it looks like. So we've got the nose cone kind of on, it's flopping about a little bit. Engine just rested on there, put a little bit of right thrust on that, hopefully that's going to be okay. There's not tons, but that's about as much as I can do, I think. Yeah, and I've got this on top, so I've glued this wedge in here, and I've drilled a hole for the canopy bolt. That's gone through there, but obviously when I put this back piece on, once I've covered it, I'm going to have to drill through this back piece as well, because the nut's going to go, the bolt's going to go through all of those bits. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy looking thing. Fins have just rested those in place with some of these engineering blocks and sat it on top of the wings, but it's quite a size actually. Good thing is it does look pretty much how it should. If you look at the plan there, it's taking shape nicely. I think once I've got the canopy sprayed black, it's going to be yeah, all nicely blended in there and looking pretty good. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of getting it to this stage. If you have enjoyed it, then click the subscribe button. It's completely free, and then you can, if you click the bell icon, you'll see when I bring out the next video. And the next video is going to be all about getting this finished, basically. So I think I'll do it all in one video. So we've got to cover it, obviously. Not going to film all of that because it's a bit boring watching people covering, but got to get it covered. Going to have a different scheme for the bottom, top, and then the fuselage is going to be in a different colour, and then I might do something on the wingtips as well, just to sort of make it stand out a bit, but we'll see. So yeah, got to get all that done. We've got to get the radio gear and electronics installed. I think I'm going to put a stabilised receiver in this because I have a feeling this is going to be a bit of a handful to fly, especially with this engine. And of course I've got this massive tuned pipe exhaust that's going to be going down the side there, so it's going to be pretty ridiculous. So yeah, if that all sounds like something you're into, then please follow along. I'd love to have you on board as a subscriber of the channel. And if you've enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. And also thank you very much to all the people that already subscribe and all my followers. Really appreciate it. Yeah, excited to get this finished. So we'll be moving on to the next stage pretty soon. But thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you soon for the next one.